Dr. Maya Thompson woke up early that morning, the soft glow of sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. She had a busy day ahead of her, a flight to Washington, D.C., where she was scheduled to meet with top officials at the Pentagon. As an aerospace engineer and former military advisor, Maya's work was both demanding and rewarding. Her expertise in cutting-edge defense technologies had earned her respect not only within her field, but also among government leaders who relied on her insights. Maya moved about her apartment, packing her suitcase with care. She slipped in neatly folded blazers, professional skirts, and a few personal items like her favorite book and a small photo of her family. Everything had its place, just as it always did when she traveled for work. For Maya, being organized wasn't just a habit, it was a necessity. In her line of work, there was no room for mistakes or delays. By mid-morning, she arrived at the airport. Pulling her carry-on behind her, she navigated the crowded terminal with practiced ease. The hum of travelers chatting, children laughing, and announcements echoing over the intercom created a familiar backdrop. Maya didn't mind airports. They were part of her routine. To her, they represented possibility, a gateway to new opportunities and challenges. As she approached the security checkpoint, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This trip was particularly important because she would be presenting groundbreaking research that could revolutionize drone technology for national defense. It was a project she had poured months of hard work into, and now, finally, she'd have the chance to share it with some of the brightest minds in the country. After passing through security without incident, Maya made her way to Gate 27, where her flight was set to depart in less than 2 hours. Finding a quiet corner, she settled into a chair and pulled out her laptop. With a steaming cup of coffee beside her, she began reviewing her presentation one last time. Her slides were crisp, her data meticulously organized. She wanted everything to be perfect. But even as she worked, Maya couldn't shake a faint feeling of unease. Something about the atmosphere today felt off. Maybe it was the way people seemed to glance at her more than usual, their eyes lingering just a moment too long before moving on. Or maybe it was the knot in her stomach that told her something unexpected might happen. Still, she pushed the thought aside. "It's nothing," she whispered to herself. "Just focus." What Maya didn't know was that this seemingly ordinary day was about to take a turn she could never have anticipated. Little did she realize that within the next hour, her life would become a scene straight out of someone else's nightmare. A stark reminder of the biases and injustices that still existed in the world. For now, though, she remained focused, determined to get through the day like any other. Unbeknownst to her, 2 police officers stationed nearby were already watching her every move. Their presence loomed in the background, unnoticed by Maya, but ominous nonetheless. The calm before the storm stretched on, unaware of the chaos that awaited. As Dr. Maya Thompson sat reviewing her presentation, she couldn't help but notice 2 police officers standing near the boarding gate. At first, their presence didn't seem unusual. Officers were often stationed at airports for security purposes, but something about the way they kept glancing in her direction made her feel uneasy. The taller officer, a man with sharp features and a stern expression, leaned over to whisper something to his partner. The second officer, shorter but equally imposing, nodded slightly before both of them turned their attention back to Maya. Their eyes scanned her from head to toe, lingering on her neatly pressed blazer and professional attire. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Maya caught it. The judgmental look that seemed to question why she belonged there. Maya tried to ignore them. She told herself it was probably nothing. After all, she was just another traveler waiting for her flight. What reason could they possibly have to single her out? Shaking off the thought, she returned her focus to her laptop, scrolling through her slides one final time. Yet, no matter how hard she concentrated, the feeling of being watched gnawed at her. Minutes passed, and the officers remained nearby, occasionally exchanging hushed words. Every so often, one of them would glance at her again, their gazes heavy with suspicion. Maya's unease grew stronger. She began to fidget with the strap of her bag, adjusting it unnecessarily as if doing so might distract her from the tension building inside her. Why are they staring? She wondered silently. Finally, unable to take it anymore, Maya decided to test the situation. She stood up, pretending to stretch her legs, and walked casually toward a nearby coffee kiosk. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the officers shifting positions, following her movements without making it obvious. Her heart sank. This wasn't paranoia. They were definitely watching her. When she returned to her seat, Maya found herself replaying the moment in her mind. Was it because she was black? Was it because she looked out of place in her professional clothes amidst other travelers? Or was it something else entirely? Whatever the reason, the scrutiny felt invasive, like an invisible weight pressing down on her shoulders. Then came the moment she had been dreading. As she sat back down, organizing her papers, the taller officer approached her. His boots clicked against the tile floor, each step echoing louder than the last. Maya looked up, startled but trying to remain calm. "Ma'am," he said sharply, his tone clipped and authoritative. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Maya blinked, taken aback. "Sure," she replied cautiously. "Is everything okay?" The officer ignored her question. Instead, he gestured vaguely toward her bag. "We've received reports that someone matching your description has been acting suspiciously. We need to ask you a few questions." Maya froze. Suspiciously? Her? She had done nothing out of the ordinary. Just sat quietly working on her laptop while waiting for her flight. The accusation hit her like a punch to the gut. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat. "I don't understand," she managed finally. "What exactly am I supposed to have done?" The shorter officer stepped forward now, his arms crossed. "That's what we're here to find out," he said gruffly. "Do you mind explaining why people think you're behaving strangely?" "People? What people?" Maya wanted to scream. No one had even spoken to her since she arrived at the gate. There was no logical explanation for this sudden interrogation. And yet, here she was, cornered by two men who clearly believed she was guilty of something she hadn't done. For a brief moment, anger flared inside her. How dare they accuse her without evidence? How dare they treat her like a criminal simply for existing in public? But she swallowed her frustration, knowing that losing her temper wouldn't help. Instead, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would leave her shaken and determined to fight back. The two officers stood over Maya, their towering figures casting long shadows across her seat. Passersby glanced curiously but quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. Maya felt small under their intense gaze, her earlier calm replaced by a growing sense of dread. She knew she hadn't done anything wrong, yet the weight of their accusations hung heavy in the air. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," the taller officer said firmly, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. He gestured toward an empty corner near the gate where they could talk privately. Maya hesitated, clutching her laptop bag tightly. Her mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. Why were they singling her out? What evidence did they have against her? None of it made sense. Still, she forced herself to stay composed. Losing control now would only make things worse. "I don't see why I need to go anywhere," she replied evenly, her tone measured despite the storm brewing inside her. "I haven't done anything suspicious. If there's a problem, we can talk right here." The shorter officer frowned, clearly irritated by her response. "Look, ma'am," he snapped, "we're just trying to do our job. Someone reported you acting strangely, and we're required to investigate. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Maya's stomach churned at his words. "Someone reported me." Who? And based on what? She had been sitting quietly, minding her own business, preparing for a work trip like any other traveler. The accusation felt absurd, almost surreal. Yet, the officers showed no signs of backing down. Reluctantly, Maya stood up, knowing resistance would only escalate the situation. As she followed them to the quiet corner, whispers rippled through the crowd of travelers nearby. Some stared openly, while others pretended not to notice. A few shot sympathetic glances her way, but none stepped forward to intervene. It was as if everyone had collectively decided that this wasn't their fight. Once they reached the designated spot, the taller officer wasted no time diving into his questions. "Can you explain why someone might think you're behaving suspiciously?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. Maya blinked, struggling to find the right words. "I honestly don't know," she admitted. "I've been sitting here working on my laptop since I arrived. I haven't interacted with anyone or caused any trouble." The officers exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Then the shorter one spoke up again. "Mind if we take a look inside your bag?" he asked, though it sounded more like a demand than a request. Maya stiffened. Why? She countered sharply, her frustration bubbling to the surface. You haven't given me any reason to believe I'm being investigated for something serious. What exactly are you looking for? The taller officer sighed dramatically, as if dealing with a difficult child. Listen, ma'am, we're just following protocol. If you cooperate, this will all be over soon. But if you refuse, he let the sentence trail off, the implication clear. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't matter. These men weren't interested in hearing her side of the story. They had already decided she was guilty before even speaking to her. With trembling hands, she unzipped her bag and handed it over reluctantly. As the officers rummaged through her belongings, her neatly packed folders, chargers, and personal items, she felt a wave of humiliation wash over her. This wasn't just about searching her bag. It was about stripping away her dignity in front of strangers. When they didn't find anything incriminating, the shorter officer scowled. All right, let's try this again, he said coldly. Are you sure you don't have anything else to tell us? Maya clenched her fists, fighting back tears of frustration. I told you everything, she said firmly. There's nothing more to say because I haven't done anything wrong. But her words fell on deaf ears. Without warning, the taller officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs. We'll need to detain you for further questioning, he announced, his voice devoid of emotion. Maya's breath hitched. What? No, you can't do this, she protested, panic rising in her voice. But it was too late. The click of the handcuffs echoed loudly as they locked around her wrists, sealing her fate, at least for now. As the officers led her away from the gate, Maya realized this nightmare was far from over. The scene at Gate 27 turned into a spectacle as the two officers escorted Dr. Maya Thompson away, her hands cuffed behind her back. Travelers craned their necks to get a better look, some whispering among themselves while others stared in stunned silence. For Maya, every step felt like walking through molten lava. The stares burned into her skin, the murmurs pierced her ears, and the weight of the handcuffs around her wrists was unbearable. She had always prided herself on being composed, professional, and unshakable, but now she felt utterly powerless. As they moved through the crowded terminal, Maya kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't want to meet anyone's gaze, afraid of what she might see. Pity, judgment, or worse, indifference. The taller officer walked briskly ahead, while the shorter one gripped her arm tightly, steering her forward with unnecessary force. Each pull of his hand reminded her that she was no longer seen as a respected aerospace engineer or a trusted advisor to the Pentagon. In this moment, she was just another black woman reduced to a stereotype, guilty until proven innocent. Can you tell me where we're going? Maya asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay calm. To a holding area, the shorter officer replied curtly, not bothering to look at her. We need to sort this out. Sort asterisk what asterisk out? Maya shot back, frustration bubbling over. You haven't told me what I'm accused of. I haven't done anything wrong. The officer ignored her question, tightening his grip instead. Maya winced but bit her tongue, knowing arguing would only make things worse. Still, the injustice stung more than the physical discomfort. How could they treat her like this without evidence? How could they dismiss her humanity so easily? They finally reached a small, dimly lit room off to the side of the main terminal. Inside, there was a single metal table and two chairs bolted to the floor. It looked like something out of a crime drama, a place meant for interrogations rather than explanations. The officers pushed Maya into one of the chairs, the sound of her cuffs clinking against the metal echoing loudly in the confined space. The taller officer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as the shorter one began pacing in front of her. Let's start from the beginning, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Why were people saying you were acting suspicious? Maya took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I don't know who these people are, she said firmly, but I wasn't doing anything unusual. I was sitting quietly, working on my laptop, waiting for my flight. That's it. The officer smirked, shaking his head. Right, because everyone sits around typing on their laptops when they're planning something fishy. Maya's jaw tightened. Planning something fishy. Was that really what they thought of her? Did they believe she was capable of causing harm simply because of how she looked? The absurdity of the accusation hit her like a punch to the gut. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to remind them of who she was and what she stood for, but she knew it wouldn't matter. To them, she wasn't Dr. Maya Thompson, aerospace engineer and military advisor. She was just another statistic in their prejudiced worldview. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket, vibrating urgently against her leg. Calls and messages poured in from colleagues wondering why she hadn't arrived at the meeting yet. But the officers refused to let her answer, ignoring her pleas to check her phone. "Your fancy job doesn't matter here," the shorter officer sneered, cutting her off mid-sentence. The words cut deeper than any insult. They weren't just dismissing her career. They were dismissing her identity, her accomplishments, her worth. Maya clenched her fists under the table, fighting back tears of anger and humiliation. She couldn't let them see her cry, not now, not ever. For nearly 20 minutes, the questioning continued, each question more invasive and ridiculous than the last. Yet no matter how many times Maya explained herself, the officers remained unconvinced. Their skepticism was palpable, their disdain unmistakable. And as the ordeal dragged on, Maya realized that this wasn't about finding answers. It was about breaking her spirit. But Maya wasn't ready to break. Not yet. As the interrogation dragged on, Dr. Maya Thompson's frustration reached its boiling point. The officer's relentless questioning felt like a game designed to wear her down, and she could see no end in sight. Her phone continued to buzz incessantly in her pocket, each vibration a reminder of the world outside this suffocating room, a world where people knew her as a professional, a leader, and a trailblazer. But here, in this tiny, dimly lit space, she was just another faceless suspect. Maya's mind raced for a solution. She couldn't let this continue unchecked. These men weren't going to listen to her explanations or care about her credentials. They had already made up their minds about her based on nothing more than bias and assumption, that maybe there was someone else who would. Summoning every ounce of composure she had left, Maya leaned forward slightly in her chair. "Look," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You're wasting your time with all these questions. If you just let me make one call, I can clear this whole thing up." The shorter officer scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Oh yeah? Who are you gonna call? Your lawyer?" "No," Maya replied evenly, locking eyes with him. "I'm calling the Pentagon." For a brief moment, the room fell silent. The taller officer stopped leaning against the wall, his arms dropping to his sides. The shorter one blinked, clearly caught off guard by her statement. "The Pentagon?" he repeated, his tone laced with disbelief. "What does the Pentagon have to do with this?" Maya didn't flinch. "Because I work closely with them," she explained, her confidence growing with each word. "In fact, I'm scheduled to meet with top officials later today to discuss national defense projects. You can verify that if you want." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. One part of them wanted to dismiss her claim as an exaggeration, a desperate attempt to get out of trouble. But another part, the part that recognized the gravity of invoking the Pentagon, hesitated. What if she was telling the truth? What if they really had detained someone important? Seeing their uncertainty, Maya pressed further. "Let me prove it to you," she insisted. "Just unlock my phone and dial this number." She rattled off the direct line of a high-ranking official she worked with regularly, someone who not only knew her well but also understood the significance of her contributions. After a tense pause, the taller officer finally relented. "Fine," he muttered, unlocking her phone and punching in the number she provided. He placed the call on speakerphone, setting the device on the table between them. It only took 2 rings before the line connected. "Hello," came a familiar voice on the other end. It was General Mark Harris, a senior advisor at the Pentagon and one of Maya's closest colleagues. "General Harris, it's Maya Thompson," she began quickly, cutting straight to the point. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm currently being detained at the airport under false pretenses. These officers seem to think I've done something wrong, though I haven't. I need your help to sort this out." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When General Harris spoke again, his tone was sharp and authoritative. "Detained? For what reason?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. Before Maya could answer, the shorter officer jumped in nervously. "Sir, we received reports of suspicious behavior. Suspicious behavior? General Harris interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. Dr. Thompson is one of our most valued advisors. She's been working directly with us on classified projects for years. Do you even know who you're dealing with? The officers shifted uncomfortably, their earlier bravado fading fast. The taller officer stammered, trying to explain themselves, but General Harris wasn't interested in excuses. Listen carefully, he barked. You will release Dr. Thompson immediately and provide her with a full apology. If I hear about any further mistreatment, I'll ensure this goes straight to the highest levels of command. Am I clear? Yes, sir. Both officers mumbled in unison, their faces pale with panic. Once the call ended, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. The officers scrambled to remove the handcuffs, muttering awkward apologies as they did so. But Maya barely heard them. All she felt was a mix of relief and anger, relief that the nightmare was ending, but anger that it had happened in the first place. Her dignity restored, Maya stood up, brushing imaginary dust off her blazer. She didn't say a word to the officers as she walked out of the room, her head held high. Outside, travelers stared in awe as she passed by, unaware of the power she had just wielded, and the fight she was about to ignite. As Dr. Maya Thompson stepped out of the holding room, her hands finally free and her head held high, she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her. Travelers at the airport had witnessed parts of the ordeal, her handcuffing, her forced removal from the gate, and now they watched in stunned silence as she emerged unbroken. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, but none dared approach her. The tension in the air was palpable. The two officers who had detained her trailed behind like shadows, their earlier arrogance replaced by visible unease. They offered mumbled apologies again, though Maya ignored them completely. She didn't have time for hollow words or insincere gestures. Instead, she focused on regaining control of the situation. Her phone buzzed repeatedly in her hand, notifications piling up from missed calls and messages. Among them was a text from General Harris. Stay strong. We're handling this. Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself before dialing his number to update him on what had happened. As she recounted the events, the baseless accusations, the humiliating treatment, the blatant disregard for her rights, she could hear the anger simmering in his voice on the other end of the line. This is unacceptable, General Harris said firmly. No one should be treated this way, especially not someone of your standing. I'll make sure this doesn't go unnoticed. True to his word, within minutes, the incident escalated far beyond the confines of the airport. General Harris contacted senior officials within the Department of Defense, urging them to take immediate action. Word spread quickly through military and government channels about how one of their top advisors had been mistreated while traveling on official business. It wasn't long before local law enforcement received direct orders to investigate the matter thoroughly. Back at the airport, news of the Pentagon's involvement sent shockwaves through the ranks. Supervisors rushed to speak with Maya, their tone apologetic and deferential. Dr. Thompson, we deeply regret what happened here today, one supervisor said earnestly. Please know that this kind of behavior is not tolerated, and we will ensure proper measures are taken against those involved. But Maya wasn't interested in empty promises. She nodded politely, but made it clear that an apology wouldn't erase the trauma of the experience. I appreciate your concern, she replied coolly, but actions speak louder than words. Let's see what changes come from this moving forward. Meanwhile, the two officers responsible for her detention found themselves under intense scrutiny. Their superiors demanded detailed reports of the incident, questioning why such drastic measures had been taken without evidence. When pressed about the supposed suspicious behavior they had cited, neither officer could provide a coherent explanation. Their vague answers only highlighted the racial bias underlying their actions. By late afternoon, the story began making headlines online. A bystander's video of Maya being led away in handcuffs went viral, sparking outrage across social media platforms. Commenters expressed disbelief and fury over the treatment of a decorated professional simply because of her race. Hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #EndRacial Profiling trended nationwide, drawing attention to systemic issues within law enforcement. For Maya, the sudden spotlight was overwhelming. While part of her felt vindicated knowing the world was watching, another part wished she hadn't been thrust into the center of a national debate. Still, she recognized the opportunity before her, a chance to shine a light on injustices faced by countless others every day. As she boarded her delayed flight to Washington, D.C., Maya resolved to use her platform to push for meaningful change. What started as a routine trip had turned into a fight for accountability, and she wasn't backing down anytime soon. The days following the airport incident were a whirlwind for Dr. Maya Thompson. What had started as a humiliating and unjust ordeal quickly transformed into a national conversation about racial profiling and police misconduct. The viral video of her handcuffing, coupled with her high-profile status, brought widespread attention to the issue. News outlets clamored to interview her, advocacy groups reached out seeking collaboration, and thousands of people shared their own stories of similar experiences online. Maya knew she couldn't let this moment pass without action. She spent hours crafting a statement to address the public, carefully choosing her words to reflect both her pain and her determination. "What happened to me at the airport was not an isolated incident," she wrote in a post that went viral within minutes. "It's a symptom of a much larger problem, a system that allows bias and prejudice to dictate how individuals are treated based on the color of their skin." Her message resonated deeply, striking a chord with people from all walks of life. Advocacy organizations like the NAACP and Black Lives Matter rallied around her, applauding her courage and offering support. They urged her to file formal complaints against the officers involved, promising to stand by her side throughout the process. Though filing complaints meant revisiting the trauma of that day, Maya didn't hesitate. Justice wasn't just about holding the officers accountable. It was about sending a clear message that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. As part of the investigation, Maya met with internal affairs representatives from the local police department. Sitting across from them in a sterile conference room, she recounted every detail of the incident: the suspicious glances, the baseless accusations, the handcuffs clicking shut around her wrists. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes burned with emotion. She refused to let them minimize or dismiss her experience. Meanwhile, the two officers faced mounting pressure from their superiors. Their actions were scrutinized under a microscope, and it became increasingly clear that they had acted out of implicit bias rather than legitimate suspicion. Both men were placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation, a decision that sent shockwaves through the law enforcement community. Some defended the officers, claiming they were simply doing their jobs, while others acknowledged the need for reform. Public outcry grew louder as more details emerged. Protesters gathered outside the airport, holding signs that read "*Stop Racial Profiling*" and "Justice for Maya". Community leaders organized town hall meetings to discuss systemic racism and its impact on marginalized groups. For many, Maya's case served as a catalyst, a tipping point in the ongoing fight for equality and justice. In the midst of the chaos, Maya leaned heavily on her support system. Friends, family, and colleagues checked in regularly, ensuring she didn't shoulder the burden alone. General Harris, in particular, remained a steadfast ally, using his influence to push for policy changes within government agencies. He even arranged a meeting between Maya and key lawmakers to discuss potential reforms. Despite the overwhelming attention, Maya stayed grounded. She reminded herself daily why she was fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been wrongfully targeted because of their race. Each new story she heard strengthened her resolve. By speaking out, she hoped to create a ripple effect, one that would inspire others to demand accountability and push for lasting change. Though the road ahead promised to be long and challenging, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just her battle anymore. It was a collective movement fueled by voices united in pursuit of justice, and she intended to lead the charge. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Maya Thompson dedicated herself to turning her painful experience into a force for good. The airport incident had left an indelible mark on her, but instead of letting bitterness consume her, she channeled her anger and frustration into meaningful action. For Maya, this wasn't just about seeking justice for herself. It was about dismantling the systemic biases that allowed such injustices to happen in the first place. Her first step was to partner with civil rights organizations to advocate for policy changes at airports and within law enforcement agencies. She worked closely with groups like the NAACP and ACLU, sharing her story as a powerful example of how racial profiling continues to harm individuals and communities. Together, they drafted proposals aimed at increasing accountability, improving training for officers, and implementing stricter protocols for when and how passengers could be detained. Maya's professional background gave her unique credibility. Lawmakers listened intently when she spoke about the need for reform. She also became a vocal advocate for bystander intervention. During interviews and public appearances, Maya encouraged people to speak up when they witness acts of discrimination or injustice. Silence is complicity, she often said. If you see something wrong, say something. Your voice can make all the difference. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals to take a stand against prejudice in their own lives. One of Maya's most impactful initiatives was organizing workshops and seminars for young professionals, particularly women of color, who faced similar challenges in predominantly white spaces. These sessions provided tools for navigating difficult situations while maintaining confidence and composure. Maya shared strategies she had learned throughout her career, emphasizing the importance of self-advocacy and resilience. Attendees left feeling empowered, many citing Maya as a role model they could look up to. The legal process against the two officers moved forward steadily. Internal investigations concluded that their actions were indeed rooted in racial bias, leading to disciplinary measures including suspension without pay and mandatory sensitivity training. While some critics argued the punishments weren't severe enough, Maya viewed the outcome as a step in the right direction. "This isn't about revenge," she explained during one interview. "It's about creating awareness and setting a precedent so others don't have to endure what I did." Maya's efforts didn't go unnoticed. Her bravery earned her recognition from prestigious institutions, including awards for leadership and social impact. Yet, accolades weren't what drove her. They were simply reminders that her work mattered. What truly fueled her was seeing real change begin to take shape. Airports across the country started reviewing their security procedures, and several police departments implemented new training programs focused on combating implicit bias. Through it all, Maya remained steadfast in her mission. Though the scars of that day at the airport would always linger, she refused to let them define her. Instead, she used her platform to amplify voices that had long been silenced, ensuring no one else would feel as powerless as she once had. By the end of the year, Maya stood taller than ever, not just as an aerospace engineer or military advisor, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story served as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of inspiration, proving that even in moments of darkness, courage and determination can spark transformative change. And though the fight was far from over, Maya knew she had ignited a movement that would continue long after her name faded from headlines. A legacy built on turning pain into purpose.